Welcome to my video series on making an executive desk. If you've been watching my videos on making a mantle, this desk is going to go into the same room that the mantle will be in. And they're both made from the same wood. My client's maple tree, of which you see a piece right here, is the main wood for the mantle and is going to be used extensively in the desk as well. Now this desk is a large desk. It's 84 inches long, 48 inches deep, has a curved front on the top, has curved panels on each side of the desk representing a column-like structure, and there's a lot of veneering in this piece, and two kinds of veneering actually. We'll be using commercial veneers, which are very thin, but we'll also be cutting thick veneers, roughly an 1/8 inch thick, from the maple from the tree. So you'll be able to see how thick veneering is done. This desk is going to have a file drawer and several smaller drawers in the back, a central drawer. We're going to use a kind of a sunburst pattern of veneer on the top, and it'll end up being a very nice piece. Here's all the solid wood from the maple tree of my clients, and at this point now I've got to sort through this stack and pick out the best pieces for the construction of the desk. Well, I took apart the entire stack of wood down below, and I found 3 planks that had started to spalt. That's where a little bit of fungus gets into the maple and causes a discoloration. I'll tilt one of these up so you can see it. Causes a little discoloration in the figure. It's highly valued wood, the spalting, so I wanted to use this where it would show well. I really had 2 choices. I could use it for the drawer fronts. The other possibility was to use this as the veneer for the front center panel, right in the middle in the front, and on the inside of the desk where the cubby where your legs go, veneering that. And so I've decided that's the best place to do this. The spalting is a little busier than the plain maple. Plain maple is plain, and I don't want this to fight the look of the curly veneer that's going to be on the rounded bent laminations on either side of the front and on the sides. But I think it'll go well, and certainly it will showcase the tree in its best light. The first cut's always the hardest. I'm going to be taking these planks that are about 5/4, they're about 1.25 inches thick, and I'm going to be bandsawing them into veneers, and the object is to end up with 4 1/8 inch thick veneers from each plank that can all be book matched. Before I can bandsaw this, I have to have a true face to lean up against the fence on the bandsaw so that the thickness that I saw is nice and even all the way down. So I'm going to take my 16-inch joiner and true the bottom face of this, then I'll go up and start bandsawing. Now I'm cutting the thick veneer from this maple from the tree. I've got my bandsaw height up above about 11.5 inches, so it's a little bit higher than the height of this board. And I've got the blade set a good healthy 1/8 inch away from my fence. It's actually 1/8 plus some, allowing some material that I can then put through the drum sander later and bring it down to as close to 1/8 inch as I can. So I'll be feeding the wood on through like this on edge, and we'll come out with a thin 1/8 inch veneer slice, and I'll continue to do that so I have book match sets. a drum sander with some 60 grit sandpaper on here to thickness these veneer pieces properly and get all the bandsaw marks out of them. And what you just saw was taking a pack of 4 sheets of the sawn veneer. This is enough to do one side of a panel. And using the bandsaw to cut an edge, the idea being that I want to get 2 parallel edges that can then be glued up. Now this edge is rough right now, so I have made a jig to hold these large sheets that I can then use to run through the jointer. And all I've got to do is take my taped up package of 4 sheets, slide it on into the jig, and then I'll just make a little adjustment just so that the package protrudes slight amount from the bottom of the jig. And using my socket wrench, go ahead and tighten up strong back bolts. Got a couple of big bolts going through here. Tighten up the strong back bolts, and now the package is sandwiched in there with just a slight protrusion, and then we'll run that through the jointer to get that edge nice and flat. The next step after that, I'll take the package with one jointed edge and run that through the table saw to get the total width that I need for the slices of veneer. Okay, now here's where things get a little bit tricky. You really got to keep thinking. What we're trying to do is joint the edges of these 1/8 inch thick pieces of veneer so that they fit together perfectly. So I know that if I can place 2 slices face to face and put them through the jointer, that any error in the 90-degree fence on the jointer will cancel itself out because these two pieces are face to face, meaning that if I got an error a little bit in one direction on one piece, there's the complementary error on the other piece, and the error cancels out. But I want to run all 4 pieces through the jointer at the same time to give me some stability. So I've got to think about this carefully. What I'm going to do is I'll take the end piece, flip it up, flip the next piece like that. Okay, so they're basically face to face, back to back. And then, keep this straight, I take this next piece and I flip it like this, and the final piece flips up like this. It's kind of like an accordion. When we put them all together, I should be able to run one edge through the jointer, flip the jig over, run the other edge through the jointer, and pieces should match up pretty good when I'm all done. This is the final fitting of the edges of the 4 pieces of veneer, and here I'm using my jig in a different way. I'm using it to clamp these 4 pieces in the vise so that I can then use a jack plane to try and really get the edges smooth. And this is the second go around. I've already done this once, and I found that I had planed a little too much in the center. And most people wouldn't even think of going back and doing this again, but in my opinion, good enough is not good enough. You've got to be perfect on this. So I'm going to go ahead and run the jack plane along again and try to get that joint so it's invisible. Laying up thick veneers is the same as thin veneers, except the jointing of the edges is done a little bit differently, but not much. And we use the same kind of tape to tape the pieces together before we glue them to the substrate. I'm using the non-perforated, thicker veneer tape. This will be on the face surface. The glue surface will not receive any tape. And this tape is, of course, applied with water, a little sponge here, and as it dries, it tends to shrink a little bit and help pull the joint together. So we'll put cross pieces of tape every few inches along the length, and then we'll tape a long piece lengthwise across the joint and let that dry before we glue up the veneers to the substrate. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and let that dry, pull the joint together, we'll do all the rest of the joints, and we'll be ready to go. Now it's time to glue the veneered panels onto the substrate. I've got some 3/4 inch plywood substrate, and I'm going to use Unibond 800 glue to do this glue up. I'm going to be spreading the glue with a notched trowel. I mixed up about 300 grams. We'll see how that goes. I may have to mix up some more. Use a notched trowel to spread it. This is a Hyde 19120. Got small little teeth. It's about the right amount of glue, and you put the glue on the substrate, and that's fine. You don't need to put it on the veneer. It's not so much a big deal with the thick veneer. With the thin veneer, you put the glue on the veneer, it just allows the veneer to expand some. You don't want that. I've glued up both sides. I'm going to slip it into the bag on a specially made platen designed to fit this piece. Platen's made of 3/4 inch particle board with melamine covering. Slip that in there. Slide on the top platen. This is a 4-foot by 4-foot polyethylene bag, nice and sturdy. You may notice I've cut some grooves in the top and the bottom. Can't see the bottom, but in the top of the platen you can see. So the air can evacuate more easily. Here's the air nipple. I'm going to put a piece of mesh between the air nipple and the top of the platen so that the air can be pulled out of the platen nicely. And then I'll seal up the bag. Okay, we're in good shape there. I've already got my air pump, my vacuum pump ready. And we slowly evacuate the bag, pushing down on the surface with about 12.5 pounds per square inch. And that should make the panel assembly nice and flat, and with plenty of pressure for the Unibond 800 to adhere, and we'll leave that overnight. Well, the panel's been in the vacuum bag all night long, and now it's time to pull it out. It's looking good. You can see the book matching of the spalted maple. I think that's going to make a very nice panel.